Hello, everyone. You are about to hear a brief retelling of the movie Miracle in Cell 7. Enjoy the movie. 2013 young girl lawyer Ye-Seung got her hands on her father's old case, but the warden she also called her father. Going outside, the girl looked at a yellow balloon, then she came to two shamans, who no matter how hard they tried nothing guessed about the life of the client. But Ye-Seung knows a lot about them, such as the fact that the daughter of one of them is called Bong-seo. The three of them came to the church and the preacher recognized her at first sight, as well as the pianist. The five men came into the courtroom. As an ex-con, they are a little uncomfortable being here. The warden also came over to say hello to them, and the old case of the defendant began. Ye-Seung was accused of kidnapping and killing a little girl. The investigation committee proved his guilt, but Ye-Seung demands a review of all the evidence. The prosecution, according to her, are based on fabricated protocols. We go back to 1997. Our heroine Ye-Seung is 6 years old, and Ye-Seung is her mentally retarded father. He promised his daughter that he would buy her Sailormoon backpack tomorrow, but it was just taken away in front of their eyes. Ye-Seung reached out his hands to the foreign child Iranian, for which he received a slap in the face from his father. In the evening, he promises his daughter that he'll find the exact same backpack before the school year starts. In the morning, the girl sees her father off to work, fixes his clothes, and gives him instructions. Ye-Seung received his paycheck and the same girl came to him with the backpack and said that she would show him where the same one was sold. The man ran after her. After a minute, a woman passing by saw Ye-Seung pulling down the girl's pants and kissing her on the lips. In the evening, little Ye-Seung, her father from work, never waited for her. He's been detained and for some reason they won't let him go home. A crowd of reporters gathered outside the door, and it turned out that the dead girl was the daughter of the police commissioner. Now Ye-Seung will be taken to conduct an investigative experiment. Here comes Ye-Seung. The suspect shows on the doll as pressed the girl's breasts, then patted on the cheeks, kissed, and also unbuttoned pants. The crowd around the area erupted in murmurs. Father and daughter saw each other and ran towards each other. The suspect was pushed into a car. He yelled that he would be home soon. A young guard reports to the warden that they have brought in the very prisoner the whole town's talking about. The simpleton saw the cell phone in the office and immediately decided to call his daughter. The warden first handed him the phone and then beat him over the head with it. A stout man came into the bathroom and was scared because he had touched him last night. Ye-Seung was brought in. There's also a shaman, aka a cheat, in the cell. The preacher was a gangster at the time. Grandpa's in for fraud. The cheat told the new guy to introduce himself, but he told us a lot more about himself. Everyone was embarrassed. Pahan ordered the fleets to take the file and read what the new guy was in for. When he heard about the crime, he immediately slapped Ye-Seung, and then the whole cell was darkened by kicking and beating him, so they put the freak in, but it's good that he's going to be executed. Meanwhile, Ye-Seung was rebuilt into an orphanage. The prison produces soccer balls, and the bespectacled man put something in one of them. In the courtyard, winking at the guard, Pahan threw it behind the wall at the request of the ball returned, but already another, with contraband. Another boss decided to deal with Pahan, realizing that he was in danger. Ye-Seung defended his neighbor and received a shiv on his side. Pahan now wants to repay Ye-Seung for his rescue, but all he wants is his daughter. The prisoners were brought to a church choir performance, and among the young children was Ye-Seung, who was not here by chance. Now the patched man is carrying her in a box on a cart through the prison corridors. Nervous, he flipped the boxes over and nearly burned himself in front of the guards. Padlety was sweating like hell, but delivered the contraband to the cell. The girl climbed out of the bun box and was very happy to see her daddy. Ye-Seung pats him with her hands and asks where he disappeared to. She's been waiting for him for so long. Ye-Seung gets loud, and Schuler gets scared and decides to turn everyone in. A small guard came running up and Schuler was about to tell them everything, but the girl took him by the finger and looked into his eyes pityingly. Schuler gave up and just asked the guard for some bread. The prisoners are surprised that the idiot has such a smart daughter. She doesn't realize what her good daddy's doing behind bars. The girl was supposed to spend 2 hours with her father, but Pastor got sick and has to leave now. Now the girl in the box has to be brought back to the Christians, but the patched man didn't have time, so the bus is left. And the child remains in the cell to the delight of her father. The cheat is more nervous than the others. The bespectacled man suggests sending the girl back in 2 days, when there will be a holiday. They'll definitely have a choir coming over again. Before going to bed, Ye-Seung instructs his father to speak clearly and loudly to the judge. During the night check, the cellmate stirred up. A petty guard thought he heard a girl's voice, but it was allegedly the patched one squeaking. The operation to remove the girl began. While the pat lady distracted the guards, Pahan brought her to the assembly hall. The only trouble is that this time, instead of a Christian choir, they brought Buddhist monks to the prison. The plan was prepared by a bespectacled boy, so he gets the smack. The warden chooses photos for publication and notices that one of them is missing a little girl. The cheat swears that he should have shaved Ye-Seung's head and thrown her to the Buddhists. A petty guard runs up to the cell and seems to have gotten away with it, but then the warden himself sees the child. Taking Ye-Seung outside, he started beating him, reminiscing about the girl's murder. Now the guards are snooping around all the cells, and Ye-Seung is tied up, thrown alone. At the orphanage, Ye-Seung cries all the time. The second crime boss of the device fires, he freaks out that one prisoner had a daughter living with him for a few days, and his father isn't even allowed to visit. He locks himself in a storage room with a can of gasoline and demands to be allowed to talk to the father. The fool closes himself in another room, but the warden breaks in and tries to rescue him. Ye-Seung sees them both lying on the floor and runs in after them. The warden woke up in the infirmary, his life saved by Ye-Seung while inhaling smoke. Ye-Seung went to the teacher and asked her to meet her dad, who is really in jail. This was the only way she would have a chance to see him again. But the time flew by too fast, though the boss was not in a hurry to interrupt them. The young guard has to pull Ye-Seung away from his daughter. In the evening, the boss remembers about his young son and is told that Ye-Seung's daughter has stopped eating and is now in the hospital. The boss comes to check on her and the girl asks him to arrest her. He had something in mind, which did not please the small guard at all, but pleased the young one. The latter brought a gift from the warden especially for cell number 7, and it wasn't rice cake at all, but Ye-Seung. The joyful Ye-Seung was brought to the warden's office so he could thank him with the cakes. While he was away, the prisoner picked up a picture of him and his son. The man didn't like it. Meanwhile, Ye-Seung asks Pahan to read, but the thug can't read. The boss is interested in Ye-Seung's case. We learn that his son is dead, and then he picks up Ye-Seung to bring her back to her father. The boss is being taught literacy by the whole camera, but he slows down and even Ye-Seung calls him a fool. A girl borrowed a cell phone from a classmate and brought it to the cell. The cheat calls his wife, who informs him that she's given birth to a daughter, but the signal keeps dropping. After running around the cell, the men found out that the best catch was near the toilet. Together they chose a name for the girl, Bong Seo, but the battery only lasted for one call. A young guard tells Ye-Seung that he has one last court hearing and needs to prepare for it. Ye-Seung tells his cellmates what really happened. First, the man himself slipped on the slippery pavement, and then the girl fell on the asphalt. She broke her head. Altogether they try to make an accurate picture of how everything happened. The girl fell on the back of her head because she was pulled backwards by the backpack. It happened on February 27th. It was bath day in the zone, but the water was cut off because the pipe froze. It was very cold, and there was ice everywhere in the market, but there was also an abrasion on her forehead and a brick lying next to it. If she fell, she could have hit the tent where the brick was. So why did we take her picture? Ye-Seung answers to loosen the belt and do not interfere with blood circulation, and then as taught at work, he did cardiac massage and CPR, and at the end of the need to push, pinch and clap, all this cardiopulmonary care. 2013, ex-convicts testify, but the prosecutor offers to disregard testimony from an ex-gangster and a crook. After arguments, his objections are overruled. The next witness is the warden, and at this point we go back to 97. The warden has come to the commissioner to ask him to reconsider Ye-Seung's case. In his cell, he continues to be prepared for the hearing and is taught to answer questions correctly, memorizing the text while jogging and jostling. Cellmates constantly ask him tricky questions. He says that the policeman beat him and blackmailed him with his daughter, only to take the blame. Ye-Seung's lawyer arrived. The father of the murdered girl, the head of the terrible people, and he can harm is Ye-Seung. The boss shows the lawyer Ye-Seung's confession, which is written too abstruse for a mentally challenged person, but the lawyer doesn't care. Later, he rides the bus with him and asks him to rally at the trial, for his daughter's sake. The session begins. Ye-Seung, according to the prosecution, kidnapped the police commissioner's daughter to get back at him for fighting in the store, and molested and killed her with a brick. The defendant is silent. He recalls how the commissioner beat him right in front of the court and ordered him to confess to everything or he would kill Ye-Seung. The commissioner, Ye-Seung, and her teacher enter the courtroom. The prosecutor asked time after time whether Ye-Seung hit the girl with a brick, and he finally said he did. When he sees his daughter, he repeats it even louder. The chief yells at him and also tells the judge that he shouldn't listen to the defendant because he's mentally retarded and only the commissioner is calm. The son accuses the lawyer that he was working against the client and all the cases against her father were fabricated. He was threatened, beaten. Fatal for the girl was hitting the back of her head against the pavement, not a brick, but Ye-Seung was only a little girl then and could not defend her father. Prosecutors in connection with Ye-Seung's confession demand capital punishment, namely the death penalty, and the judge approves it. Now Ye-Seung lives in the family of the police chief. She continues to visit her father, writing him letters. Another postcard is tried to read by Pahan. The order for Ye-Seung comes, and the date of December 23rd is set. The warden asks the teacher to let Ye-Seung go to jail with the choir one more time. He has something in mind. While Ye-Seung is making snowmen, his comrades are thinking of ways to save him. Now the conspirators are always working on something in the back room. Ye-Seung and the choir were brought to the prison to sing to the prisoners again. The girls went to the hall, took them by the hands, and led them to the courtyard. There was already the real balloon we had been working on all this time. The cellmates threw the children out of it. They put Ye-Seung and her daughter inside and untied the balloon. But they couldn't fly home. The rope got caught on the barbed wire and the balloon hovered. But they spent beautiful moments together, admiring the sunset. It was December 23rd. The date of the execution coincides with Ye-Seung's birthday, and she receives gifts, the most important of which is a Sailormoon backpack. Her daughter thanks Ye-Seung for being her father. He thanks her for being his daughter. The warden rips up Ye-Seung's fake confession. The suicide bomber himself says goodbye to his friends and thanks them for everything. They all posted on his forum that they love him. Now Ye-Seung has to say goodbye to his daughter, who promises that next time she'll get him a lot of A's on his report card and wishes him a Merry Christmas. They're separated by the bars. Father and daughter stare at each other until Ye-Seung is dragged around a corner. There his legs gave out, and the girl felt something wrong and called out to her dad. He breaks free and runs up to her, hugging her tightly through the bars. He desperately asks the supervisor and the young guard to help save him, but it's too late. At the end of the trial, Ye-Seung asks for her father to be acquitted. The judge says that the confession lured the defendant out by fraud and passed it off as truth. Also, the testimony of the prosecution witnesses was insufficient for the death sentence. Ye-Seung is found innocent 16 years after the execution. Ye-Seung looks at her father's picture and cries. When she went outside, she thought she saw herself and her father in the same balloon.